Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Clever Girl. I am your host, Rachel, and today we are going to be talking about the books that I have read so far this year. Now, we're in a different location in my apartment. I decided to sit over here because my bookcase is here, and I'm going to be talking about books. So this is actually new. I just got it maybe like 2 or 3 days ago. I've been doing a lot of redecorating in my apartment as of recently just because I had furniture that I felt was like way too big for my space. Especially in this corner, things were just very cluttered and I had a lot of like weird storage situation. So I've been redecorating over here quite a lot. But now I finally feel like it is in a place that I love because I do spend a lot of time in my living room. So I wanted to make it cozy and make it like more my style and make it something that I love to hang out in. So part of that was the bookcase. I know a lot of people are probably going to wonder why I have all my books facing backwards. And the reason is because I used to have a much bigger bookcase with like all of my books, like a ton of books in it. And I donated a bunch of them. And I keep some of my law books in here because I just don't need them all out. And the reason that the books are backwards is because the covers, I just feel like having them all facing out with like all the colors and different designs and stuff, it's just too overwhelming. It's like too overstimulating with the colors and the multiple colors, and just it didn't look great to me. So I decided to just put them backwards because I like that. And you know, they're all different shades of yellow. So that's not great, but it is what it is. I don't really have too many updates at this point. I just recorded a few weeks ago and I just don't have much new things to say other than this is the second time I'm recording this episode because I tried recording it last night and my phone died like in the middle of it. It was like getting really long and I just didn't like what I had recorded. So I'm trying again. Who knows? This may never see the light of day, but I hope so because this is just like a fun topic and I love talking about books. So I'm gonna just kind of like back up a little bit. So I posted a video back, I think in February, about doing like setting goals and how to stick to them. So it's about halfway through the year. So I'm kind of checking in on those goals. And one of my goals was to read 12 books this year. And I know for some people that's just not a lot, especially like the book talkers and the bookstagrammers and the book YouTubers of the world. They read like hundreds of books every year. But as a person with a full-time job that isn't content creation, reading can be difficult, especially longer books. And the books that I tend to like are all like in a series and stuff like that. So I set a goal to read 12 books. Now, when I say read, I mean physically read with my eyes. I don't count audiobooks like towards my 12 book goal, mostly because it just doesn't take the level of concentration and attention that physical reading takes. But I don't like discount audiobooks and listening to audiobooks as like reading. I think it's still within the genre of reading. It's under the umbrella of reading. I just think like the verb of literally reading is very different from listening to an audiobook. While you listen to an audiobook, you can do a dozen different things. You can clean, you can take a shower, you can work and stuff like that. You can drive, but you really can't do much when you're reading a book. Some people can like eat and walk on the treadmill and stuff like that. I personally can't do that. So I just think it takes a higher level of concentration, therefore making it more difficult to do. And to be honest, I prefer reading with a physical book or even like a Kindle because I feel like I can like really grasp what's in the book better and I can like get more invested into it. However, I am listening to audiobooks. I'm just not counting them towards my goal. I'm trying to listen to the classics, like classic novels on audiobook because I do have a hard time sitting down and reading them. So I have listened to a few. I swear to God, every time I record, my cat becomes a fucking menace. I don't understand. Anyways, I have listened to a few audiobooks already this year, and I'll talk about those. I'm not really going to give the classics a ranking the way that I'm going to rank the other books. I mostly read fiction. I only read fiction, actually. I don't know why. Don't know why I said mostly. I like literally only read fiction. So for my fiction books, I'll be ranking them out of 10, and I'll try to give like a short synopsis. I'll try to keep it short. And then I'll try to talk about the things that I liked and didn't like about the book. And for the most part, I recommend all of these books that I'm going to talk about. But for the classics, for my classic novels that I've been listening to on audiobook, I'm only just going to do it's kind of like a pass-fail scale. I'm going to call it worth it or not worth it. So I guess like that's kind of mostly the background. I read a lot of fiction. The books that I typically tend to like are sci-fi, fantasy. I like very mild fantasy. I just cannot get really deep into the fantasy world with like fae and other creatures like that, like centaurs, and I don't even know what they're called, the ones that are like half goat. I don't know why. I've tried to read books like that. I just, for some reason, can't buy in unless the characters are just extremely humanoid, and I mean that in like a very physical sense. I don't know why, but for some reason my brain just can't map to like animal human creatures. Don't know why. Not to say they're not good books, they're just not the ones for me. But I do like sci-fi, I like fantasy, I like world building, I like really in-depth characters, insightful characters. I like characters that seem very human. I think like some people are good at writing that and some people aren't. I also really like dystopian/utopian novels and things of that kind of nature. So that's kind of like the background of the types of books that I enjoy. So if you're not into those kinds of books, you probably won't like this. We don't have the same taste. So let's get into it. These are the books I've read so far this year. So I'm going to try to go in order of how I chronologically read these books. However, I did read a whole series, a whole trilogy. So I'm going to take that out of order a little bit. But for the rest of the books, I'm going to try to go through them chronologically as I read them. So at the start of the year in January, the first book I read was The Burning White. And if I'm being really honest, I started this book the last week of December. So I just finished it this year. This book, as you can see, is obviously very long. It's probably just under 1,000 pages. And this author does not he values the space on the page. So every new chapter typically starts in the middle of a page. Like here's chapter 90. See, he does not waste any space. Starts in the middle of the page. The Burning White by Brent Weeks. This is actually the final book in a 5-book saga. It's called the Lightbringer Saga. And the first book is, I believe, called The Black Prism. I'll say my rating for this book alone is probably like an 8 out of 10. It's a really good book, and I think he did a really good job coming to a conclusion for all of the characters, which he writes from multiple different character perspectives. So there are like several storylines that you are reading through, and then they kind of come together in the end, which is great. I will say it is a lot to get through. Like there's just so much going on. And I think like the ending, although very wholesome, I guess is what I would say for the characters, and very like, there's just an element of like, they are all getting a sense of self that they deserve. But part of it is a little bit religious, and like explanations for things kind of become religious. Like it falls upon the one God that they all don't know if he's real or not real or what. And it's just kind of, some people I think would say it's a cop out to not explain some things and just explain it away with like, oh, it was God's wish, or like the god embodies himself and explains that it's his wish. But I do think like the ending for one of the main characters, I feel like it's like fair. It's very fair for him. He like was a very much a hero, then anti-hero, and then hero again in the end. And I think he gets a really good ending. Anyways, so 8 out of 10 overall for this book. I would say like the series as a whole is probably one of my favorites that I've ever read. I don't know why more people don't talk about this, because it is such a unique story that is also like not so far out there and very grounded in like humanity that I don't understand how it's not like one of the most popular fantasy series. Maybe it was, I don't know. I mean, it was a New York Times bestseller, but I just like feel like I don't ever hear anybody talking about it. So I think like the first book, The Black Prism, is amazing. Like there is the magic in this world and is like so unique. It's like nothing I've ever seen in any other story before. Essentially, it's like the characters who have magical powers can take light and make it into like physical things. They can build things out of it. They can start fire with it, things like that. They like, some of them can use different wavelengths from the light spectrum. It's hard to explain, but like it is very, very cool. And the first book has this like crazy twist in it that like turns everything on its head and makes things like so incredibly unbelievable that you're like, you just have to read more. You have to consume more. But it seems that in every consecutive book after that, the author is kind of chasing that high and then doesn't explain a lot of things that first twist would kind of make things not make sense. I'm trying to explain it without giving real spoilers. But in general, it is still one of my favorite books. I think like the characters are very well developed. They're very like, you kind of grow up with them. In the first book, the main character is 16. And then by the end, I think he's like 22 or 23 around there. He's still very young. Maybe he's only like 20. I actually don't remember. He's still very young, obviously. But I think it's like such a cool world. So many very cool characters, like evil characters, and just like the elements of humanity really come into play, which I love books like that. You'll see one of the other books I've read this year is very similar, but there's like a lot of friendship, a lot of religious elements in this, but I really like it. So highly recommend. The next book I read was very different, a different style than what I've been explaining, but it's The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. This book is, if you don't know, it's more of like a thriller mystery type of book, and it's been made into a movie, and you'll probably see that is like one of my core genres is books that have been made into movies. It just so happens that a lot of those books are sci-fi or like dystopian type young adult novels, but The Girl on the Train is similar to other books that I've read, like Gone Girl, that I really, really loved. So this book is about this woman who takes a train to work every day, and while on the train, she witnesses something that is important to a investigation of a missing person who ends up, you find out, being murdered. I think it's a great before bed read that if you're just looking for like an easy read, it's actually very interesting and very fun, because like I couldn't put it down because I just had to know who did it. I had to know who was the person responsible for this person going missing. Like, you know, you're going to find out. So you just have to keep reading. And like, I love making predictions like, oh, I think it's going to be this person, or I think this other person was involved and I think it happened this way. Like, I just love trying to guess. And I'll say I didn't guess who it was until like very close to the end of this book. And I have a couple criticisms. My main criticisms are that, like, I think there are a lot of tropes that the thriller and mystery novels follow in this book. Not to say that they're bad. Obviously, they're tropes because they work, but like there are just certain tropes. Like, I'm not going to give anything away really, but it's like unreliable narrator and it's always the husband, like that kind of thing. So I think like that's just one criticism, and it makes certain parts of the book very predictable. The other thing is that the book is written from 3 different perspectives, 3 different women who are involved. So the main character, the woman who goes missing, and then another woman. And I just have to say, like, I hate books or stories, even movies where like shows, whatever, where there's just no one to root for. Like they're all bad people making bad decisions and there's nobody to root for. I don't like that. I don't like when you kind of just hate every character and you're just kind of like, all of you suck. Like that sucks for me. Like I love a hero arc. I love a hero's journey. I like reading books like that. I don't like when every single character, every woman and every man, I'm not rooting for them. I don't like any of them, but I did read it very fast because I had to know what happened. So this I would probably give maybe a 7 out of 10, 6.5 to 7 out of 10, because although like well written, very compelling, it was a number 1 New York Times bestseller. So, but it does have like some of those things that I just can't get behind. Next, I read one of the Divergent books. So I'm going to skip over that for now and talk about the book that I read in between reading the Divergent series, Project Hail Mary, which is by Andy Weir. This book is by the same author as The Martian, and it is also about space travel, and it is very similar to The Martian. The Martian is one of my favorite books I've ever read, as well as this one now. So Project Hail Mary, I think, ranks really high up there for me. Like it is probably one of my number 1 books, like holy grail books. Andy Weir just has a really great way of writing science and humor. And if you don't know what this book is about, essentially it's about this guy who is a high school science teacher, and he and everybody else learns that like the world is dying and there is a team being put together to try to figure out how to save it. And they have to send a crew of astronauts into space to figure it out. And he ends up on that crew. And there is an element of like memory loss in this. And that's another thing that I really love in books is like, I like learning about the story, about the environment, about the history as the narrator is learning about it. Like it's kind of like you're in it together. I just love that like camaraderie feeling you get when you read this novel. If I had to sum it up, it's kind of like a buddy comedy. Like he ends up in space and he like makes a great friend, and it's just very wholesome and lovely, and you don't have any idea like what is going to happen and how it's going to end. And it is essentially a suicide mission. So like there is just so much like sadness to it, but it really makes like the relationships and all the things that happen very warm and like heartwarming. My one criticism of Project Hail Mary is that maybe like from about 150 to 100 pages to the end, there like it kind of not slows down, but it kind of seems like there are catastrophes happening, like there's problems and challenges coming up just for the sake of giving the character challenges rather than like moving the storyline forward. Because like at that point, you learn that it is a suicide mission. This character is not going to live. So like, why make crazy shit happen that is going to like further damage him? You know, that's like the only thing. And you're getting close to the end at that point. So like you're trying to get to the crux of the story, which is like, how is this going to end? Is it going to end with him dying, or is it going to end with him doing something else, like figuring out a solution to not die? Because this whole time it's been like, well, he's going to die. He knows that from the beginning. So it made me upset or like frustrated, because I'm like, just stop giving him challenges. Like, tell us what's going to happen. Like, let's get to it. But that's also because I read it really fast, and like, I just loved the story so much, and I just wanted to know what was happening. And I didn't like that there was just like maybe additional challenges for no reason. But that's like literally my only criticism. I think some people might shy away from a book like this because there is a lot of science in it, like a lot. But I will say, like, the way that it's written is like for the science people and also for the not science people. So it'll go through all the science, and like the character will explain, like, this is the experiment I've done, and here's the elements that I've used, and here's how I did it, and I built this contraption, and I did these things. And then he'll say like the results, and he'll be like, this is the results of it. And then he'll be like, and that means it was a success. Like, and we have a solution. Like, that's like how he'll address and move forward, so that the reader who doesn't understand the results of a science experiment can understand like why it's important, basically. So I give this book a 9.5 out of 10. I want to read it again, and I've heard the audiobook is really great. So I'm going to maybe try to do the audiobook like at the end of the year or something like that. Next, I'm going to talk about the Divergent series. So I read Divergent by Veronica Roth, and I read this in literally 2 days. Like, it is quite long in pages, but I feel like the margins are very big, so I don't really give myself that much credit. If you don't know what this book is about, it is about this girl who lives in this like kind of utopian, dystopian future where she lives in the city of Chicago, but they're closed in, and all the people are divided into factions, and the factions are based on different like human characteristics, human traits that people think are important to embody. So like charity, honesty, peacefulness, courage, and intelligence. So they're raised in the faction that their parents are in, and then when they're 16 they get to choose which faction that they want to go into. So this story is about her choosing a faction, and then essentially she's like learning all of the corruption that happens within this system. And at the end of the book, there is a leader who kind of tries to like mind control a bunch of people. It's just a lot of like trials and tribulations that she's going through. It's a great book. Like, it's a great idea. It's just my number one criticism of this is that the writing is so shallow. Like, I think that the idea is like so compelling, and it's so like, it really hooks you in because it's such an interesting world and interesting like idea, but there's no like deep diving into the character. There's no deep diving into the world. It is just, it's almost like it was written by a 16-year-old because it's about a 16-year-old. And I get that. And I think it is YA. So like, it's not going to be as in depth as something that's written for adults who are really into sci-fi. It just seems like the book would be so much cooler and better if it was like really fleshed out. And it's not. The thoughts of the main character are very shallow. It is so hard to explain other than like, it's just very like 6th grade reading level. Just certain details are not given. One that really stuck out to me was that you don't understand how much time has passed when any events are happening. Like, it will be like, the character is like, okay, we went into this room and then we had this conversation and then we all left the room and then we went into this other building and we did this thing. And you just don't have any clue if it's been 6 hours or 30 minutes. You have no idea. And there's no like explanation of how much time has passed. So I don't like that. I think it really takes you out of the story because you're like, wow, everything is happening so fast. I just don't understand like, I just don't understand, That being said, I read it in 2 days. So I really liked the idea. I really liked elements of the story. I just thought it was just very shallow writing. The next book, Insurgent, what happens is essentially a group of people have an insurgence on the leaders who are trying to control everybody. The writing gets better. It's just like still very similarly shallow. It kind of ages a little bit along with the character, but the character is 16 for the whole of the trilogy. Like, she never ages because everything happens very quickly. I think from Divergent to Allegiant, it's probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months. I don't even know. And to be honest, I don't really remember all the details of this. Maybe the girl gets tortured. I can't really remember. And the other criticism I think this series gets a lot is that in the first 2 books, there is no explanation of how they got into this situation. Like, how is their community locked into this city? Who decided on the factions? How did this all start? Why are they in there? And what would happen if they left? Like, what's beyond the fence? Like, are they the only people left on the planet? Like, there's just literally no answers and no question from the character at all either, which is interesting because I feel like most books like this, that is the story, is like the character is questioning why their society is the way that it is. And it's not like that at all. It's literally just like different difficulties happening within the society until you get to Allegiant. And Allegiant tries to answer all of those questions. They go beyond the fence, and they meet other people. And they learn why they're in this community. And spoiler, which I don't think is a spoiler, the book's been out forever and for like at least 10 years, and the movies are out, so whatever. But spoiler anyway. Just like most other dystopian YA novels, it's an experiment because the world is ending. So it's just that explanation is very frustrating. And I think that the author tried to be unique in the sense of like why the world is ending, which I think is the only way to differentiate these dystopian YA novels. Personally, it just wasn't up to my standards. I do think it's a great series. I think if I read it when I was 16 or 17, I would have been obsessed with it. But as a 31-year-old, I think it's just like below the mark for me. Like, there's just not enough detail and not enough like deep writing and character development and insight for the character and self-reflection for the main character. Like, that is the main thing, is she's just moving about the world and not really analyzing much about her actions. I think like there is trauma that she's like coping with and things that she's trying to get through, but I wouldn't say that she's like really thinking about who she is as a person. It just seems like conflict with other people just reconciles on its own. Like, she at some point comes to apologize, or the other person apologizes, and then they're friends again, or they're back on good terms again. And it's like, I don't know. To me, that's just like lazy writing. But I will say, after reading this, I was shocked to learn that Veronica Roth, the author, was 21 when Divergent got published. So she was very young. So I get, like, it makes a lot of sense now. Overall, I would probably rate the series like a 7 out of 10. It's good. It's worth reading if you're into that type of storyline. And especially if you're like a young adult, you're a teenager, you would probably love it if you haven't read it yet. It's great. Next up, I read a very similar story, dystopian YA, and it was The Maze Runner. This book, very distinctly different from Divergent. One of my favorite books I've ever read. Like, I read it so fast. I was just very, very, very into the world that they were in and this character and what he's doing there. And Like, if you don't know what it's about this group of boys who are stuck inside this maze that has a bunch of creatures in it that want to kill them. And they are trying to find a way out. They don't know why they're there. Their memories have been wiped. They don't know who put them there. They don't know anything about their past. They only know their own names. And then they all have like jobs inside the maze that they do. And then this boy becomes a runner because he thinks he knows how to get them out. He doesn't know how, but he thinks he's like the person who's going to do it. And then a girl shows up. And they have like this connection, they know, and then memories start coming back to them and things start unraveling basically and just changing. And I don't know, I just don't know what it is about the book, but it is just so good. The memory thing and not knowing where he is, and you're learning all of this stuff about the maze and where they're living in the glade and all of these different people along with him. Like, he doesn't know anything about these people. You're getting to know them as he's getting to know them. So it's like they become your friends or they become your enemies, and you're analyzing it with him and you're thinking kind of what he's thinking. I don't know. It's so well written, and the characters are very lovable and they're all very distinct from each other, which I think in comparison to Divergent is just another criticism, I guess, I have of Divergent. Like, the character development in The Maze Runner there's so much contrast to it, that of the character development in Divergent, where The Maze Runner, the characters are all very distinctly different for character trait reasons, for the way that they talk and the way that they act and the way that they respond to stimuli and the way that they respond to other people and how they think and their mannerisms. They're all just different. It's like they're real people. Whereas in Divergent, it seems that all the characters are certifiably identical. They may vary in gender and height, but the only thing that sets them apart from each other is the faction that they come from, which is based in a character trait. So the girl from the honesty faction just blurts out everything that she thinks, and that's what makes her different from, for example, the character from the charity faction who's very quiet. Like, it's just, that is such a cop out and like a lame way to differentiate characters other than physical appearance. Like, to me, it just seems like lazy almost, or elementary, I guess. But like, and it's like not impossible to make them different. Like, I don't know how to explain how the Maze Runner does it, because it's just good writing. Like, it's just somebody who knows how to write characters. So I loved this book. I really I want to read the rest of the series. Technically there's 5 books in the series. However, I think maybe after the third, there's like, it changes or something, because I think it was originally a trilogy. And I have the second book. I have Scorch Trials, but I'm really scared to read it because I loved Maze Runner so much that I'm like really worried that it's going to be so different that I'm not going to like it. So we'll see. I'm going to read it, but I'm just going to wait until I'm ready to read it, because I'm scared it's going to just not be as good, you know? With that all being said, I give The Maze Runner 10 out of 10, which is like crazy to me. But like, I was so invested in it. I was so invested in all the characters. I just wanted to know what was going to happen with them and how it ends. And like, it's like, the ending obviously is just a setup for the next book. It's not like a conclusion to the story. It just ends. It's just like so good. So it's a 10 out of 10. I have no criticisms for it. I don't know. I was like sitting here, I was writing up my rankings and why, and like trying to write like a criticism for each book. And I don't have a criticism for it. Like, it is YA, but it's not written in a elementary or bland or lame or lazy or like low quality way. It is just such a great book. So I highly recommend that one. And then finally, I just finished reading this one yesterday, Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. It's kind of a new series based on the Red Rising trilogy. It's like a second trilogy. So Red Rising was the original book that became a trilogy with Golden Sun and Morning Star. And essentially what Red Rising is about is this boy who grows up in this society where there is like a hierarchy of people, and he is at the bottom of the hierarchy. He lives in a mine. He essentially lives as a slave, although he doesn't know it. He learns it in the story. And at one point, he is transformed into a person who is at the top of the hierarchy, and no one knows that he changed or who he was before he became a person at the top of the hierarchy. The first book, he goes through like what they call the Institute. It's a school where they learn about like war, essentially. So they do war games. And then like the rest of the series is essentially about like this uprising and him breaking this society and all these characters who are a part of it. And it ends with what essentially becomes the beginning of a war. That might be my favorite trilogy I've ever read. I think I said that about the first book, the Lightbringer series, but I think that Red Rising is very different, and it's one of my favorite. It's just one of the best written sci-fi stories I've ever read. And the reason I love it so much is because it's written from first person, and the main character is very human. Like all of his inner thoughts are so insightful and so reflective. And it is just such an interesting and insightful and thoughtful like exploration of humanity and society, class systems, like all of those things. It's just really, really well done. And Morningstar especially is just so well done. And Morningstar might be my favorite of all of the three in the first trilogy. It might be my favorite because it's when I realized the author has this exceptional way of doing the unexpected. And I really, truly mean that. Like, I find that like sci-fi and fantasy novels, any stories in any movies, I feel like I can predict what's going to come. I can predict what's going to happen. And he does the thing where he like sets up what's coming. So you're thinking like, oh, the opposite's going to happen, or like this other thing's going to happen because he's setting this up so much. But that's not what happens. He just gives this like crazy twist. Like I remember this one scene in Morningstar where I literally gasped out loud. I was like, because it was like, like the scene setup is like she sauntered up to her mother. She elegantly grabbed her. She elegantly took her hand, and then she like, it's just, it's crazy. Like it makes me, those kinds of situations just like are so insane to me. And then like, chaos ensues after that. So Iron Gold, now that I've given the backstory, Iron Gold, there is a 10-year jump into the future after the end of the original trilogy. So it includes the main character in that trilogy, and then it includes 3 other main characters. So it's written similarly to Game of Thrones. It's actually very similar to Game of Thrones, but in space. It's a very like politically, societally war-driven story. So they're in the middle of war, and it's just from all these different people's perspectives that like things don't actually come together in the end, because it's not the end of the story. There are 2 more books in this series, and I think I would probably rate it like a 9 out of 10. It is so long, first of all, but it's really, really good, and it has the same elements from the first trilogy that I loved in this, but now there are more characters to get in deep with. So, and it just is, again, like this probably more than the original trilogy, just very insightful look at human nature and what it is to be a person, and evaluating your own life and your role in the world that you are in. And all of these characters do that. They all are very insightful. They all like their inner thoughts are just so deep. And even though they're not like deep people, you know, some of them you might think that they are, like the main character, obviously, because we learned everything about him in the first series. But these other characters, you don't know them. They have these different lives, and they all come from different backgrounds, and the way that they speak is even different. The way that they react to people and the way that they hold themselves out to the world is all different. And you can see that. You can see in their inner thoughts and in the way that they move about the world. It's just, I love that kind of writing. And I think I had never read anything like it until I read the Red Rising series. And that's what has kept me going. It is just, and like the vocabulary in this book is so good. There's just so many words I don't know, which is kind of hard for me to come by sometimes. So I love that. I think it's a challenging read. I think it is very insightful. I can't think of another word to say insightful. Like, it's just very, like, it's just such a good look at people and human nature, like I said before. So I give it a 9 out of 10. I think what I don't like is that, again, like, it's kind of hard to root for any of these characters because some of them kind of suck or they're just annoying, or even the main guy, you're kind of like, yeah, what he's doing is right. And then when you get to the end, like, you are kind of like, why would you make that choice? You didn't get to follow him enough in this book, I think, to go deep enough to understand how different he is now that he's 10 years older. So I still really loved it, and I'm going to read the next one. I just think I maybe need a palate cleanser in between because the next one is incredibly long. So that's all of the physical books that I've read this year. That's 8 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books. I'm going to start a new book today. I think I'm just going to read like a short palate cleanser. I really need something to like wash away the war of that book. And then I can get into the rest of the series and maybe into the rest of the Maze Runner series. The 3 audiobooks I've listened to. So the first one is called Less. It won the Pulitzer Prize, I think in like 2022. And the last Pulitzer Prize winner I read was Demon Copperhead. And I think that might be my favorite book of all time. So I decided to give this one a shot. It's about this gay man who travels around the world. It's a little bit like Eat, Pray, Love, but with this gay guy. And it is a love story, and I think it's really sweet. I think I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10. It's like such an easy read and just kind of fun to follow him along. Although he is a little bit depressing and annoying, but what man isn't, you know? And then the other books that I have listened to on audiobook are Animal Farm and 1984. And they're both by George Orwell. I think if you don't know what these books are about, you probably didn't go to high school. I don't know. Essentially, like, they're both about similar storylines. The author was writing about authoritarian governments and specifically, I believe, the Russian Revolution. That might not be right. Not sure. He wrote these stories. Animal Farm is literally about animals on a farm, but it is an allegory for what happens when authoritarian governments come into existence and how they control the population with propaganda and fear. And 1984 is just a more realistic, non-allegory, drawn out version of that, and more in depth into how these authoritarian governments manage to do that. And it's kind of like, they're both kind of like a warning to society to look out for those things when your government seems to be doing that, when they start to control everything that you do and say. They try to change and rewrite history and control your thoughts and penalize you and criminalize you for your thoughts and for just any little actions that you want to do that are outside the norm. And it's just all about authoritarian and totalitarian regimes. They both, like, Animal Farm was easy to listen to, I think, because it's very short, but 1984 was really long. And to be honest, very depressing because it's just scary in 2025 where it seems we're like going down this path with this administration, and I think people are being like complacent about it, and it's just scary. It's scary to hear like this future society that could come into existence in America if we aren't careful and we don't stand up for ourselves as a people and for our rights. So as far as like how I would rate them, they're definitely both worth reading. So I like I said, to listen to them on audiobook. I know the 1984, there is a new audiobook that is like actors kind of playing it out like a script. I don't listen to those. I think they're a little bit distracting, and I'm also not going to pay Audible for that. I just listen to them on YouTube because they're both free there. And it is a little bit easier for me to get through and to digest when I'm listening to them because they're just very sometimes densely written and confusing. So I would really recommend reading them. They're worth it. The last thing I want to go through before I wrap things up is books that are on my list for the rest of the year. I do have a really long TBR as far as like classics I want to listen to. So up right now, I'm listening to The Lord of the Flies, which I also didn't read in high school. The reason I'm listening to all these classics is because I have never read them before. And I know a lot of people read them in high school, so I'm trying to just listen to them and, garner the lessons from them now. So I'm listening to Lord of the Flies right now. And I think maybe next I'll do like some kind of romance, historical romance, like Wuthering Heights or Pride and Prejudice, although those are both very long, but I'm going to try. So those are up on my TBR next. I've obviously several more. I just can't get through them all in this one episode. But next on my physical TBR, if you don't know what that means, it means to be read. I started another book right now. It's called, I'm going to see if I can find a cover for it, but it's called Polymorph. It's by the same author who wrote this other YA series that I really like, which is called Uglies. And I loved that book. I loved that series when I was younger. So I decided to give this one a try. I just started it. Not sure where I land on that. And I also have the next book in the Iron Gold trilogy, Dark Age. So this is such a beefy book. I don't know if I'm going to start it. I hate starting books like this because I feel like I get trapped in them for like so many weeks, and it cuts into like, it makes me scared I'm not going to reach my goal of 12 books in a year. So, but I do have it on the list. And then the next book in the Maze Runner series, The Scorched Trials, will come very soon. I also have this book, The Lies of Loch Lamora. I think it's like set in Venice, or like an alternative to Venice, and it's about this like thief heist. It's like a heist book. So I've been recommended this quite a lot, so I'm going to try that out. The other books that I really want to read are The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. She's written so many vampire books in this same world, notably Interview with a Vampire, and that I realized is just like such a well-written book, and I really loved it the first time I read it. So I want to read more of her work, so I'm going to try The Vampire Lestat. I might also try The Queen of the Damned, which is another book by her. And I have like so many other books on my TBR. Like I would really love to read some of these like TikTok popular ones, like Fourth Wing. That's really the only romantasy I think I would probably dive into, just because I'm like really into dragons. So we'll see about that. I've heard a lot of things about it, so I would be going in with like preconceived notions about the book, but I have heard it's good, so I might try out that series. I mean, this puts me at 12 for the year. If I can go beyond 12, that would be so awesome. I forgot to mention this, but I did DNF a book, so I did have to quit a book because I could not freaking get through it. Like I started it. It was Life of Pi. I thought I would like it because it falls into that category of like books that have become movies, but I got like the first 50 pages into it and it just was so slow and boring. I just couldn't do it. So I might give it another try in audiobook form, but for now I'm just shelving it and I might come back to it another time. So yeah, that is all of the books that I've read so far this year. I hope you enjoyed. If you have similar taste to me, then go ahead and give me a like. If you have any book recommendations, you can drop it in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and you can also turn on post notifications if you don't want to miss the next episode. I also have an Instagram account. I don't post over there as often as I want to, but you can also follow, and I'm going to try to post some more over there. So that's it. I will see you in the next video. I was going to do a quiz, but I decided this video is just really long. So I'm going to just save it for the next one. But thank you all so much for being here. I hope you liked this episode. I would love to do more stuff like this, movie reviews, even like music album reviews. That would be really fun. So let me know if that's something you're into. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. All right. Love you, Mom. Bye.